The giant meeting hall was full of noise and excitement. Creatures from 47 different worlds sat in their special seats, all waiting for what they thought would be the end of the human problem. The war had gone on for 3 long years, and everyone believed Earth would finally give up today. Jake Morrison sat at the human table with his hands folded. His face showed nothing, but inside he was angry. The old soldier had seen too many battles to let his feelings show. Next to him, Admiral Kate Sullivan looked at the glowing papers in front of them. Her jaw was tight as she read the terms the aliens wanted them to accept. The terms were terrible. Earth would have to give up 70% of their colonies. They would pay huge amounts of money to the aliens. Worst of all, the Galactic Council would control everything humans did for the next 100 years. It was not a peace deal. It was slavery with fancy words. Speaker Vexstar stood up at the front of the room. He was tall and made of something that looked like living crystal. His voice was loud and full of pride as he spoke to everyone in the hall. "These terms are very fair for a species that has caused so much trouble," he said. "The humans have been too aggressive. They have taken too much space. They refuse to follow our rules. They have put many worlds in danger." Morrison stood up slowly. His black suit was simple compared to the bright robes and glowing skin of the aliens around him. Every eye in the room turned to look at him. "Speaker Vexstar," he said in a calm voice, "these terms are not just bad, they are insulting." The room went quiet for a moment, then whispers started everywhere. The aliens looked shocked. How dare the humans refuse their generous offer? General Thokmar of the Zalkarian Empire made a clicking sound with his mouth parts. He thought this was funny. "The humans must be joking," he said. "Their ships are scattered. Their colonies are under attack. They have no power to say no to." U.S. Admiral Sullivan stood up next to Morrison. Her uniform was clean and pressed, even after 3 years of fighting. "We came here because we thought the Galactic Council wanted real peace," she said. "Instead, we find a fake trial designed to make conquest look legal." Morrison pulled out a small device and pressed a button. His voice went out to every human, ship and colony in the galaxy at the same time. "This is Ambassador Morrison speaking to all human forces. Operation Exodus starts now. We are going home." The human team began packing their things. They moved fast and worked together like they had practiced this many times. The aliens watched in shock as the humans got ready to leave. "You cannot just walk away from these meetings," Vexstar said. His crystal body flashed with anger. "The Council has spent months preparing these terms." Morrison stopped at the door of the hall. He turned back to look at the speaker. "Vexstar, you have made your position very clear. Now we will make ours clear too. Earth is leaving all Galactic Council agreements right now. Good day." The humans walked out of the hall in a straight line. Their boots made sharp sounds on the metal floor. Behind them, the aliens sat in stunned silence. General Thokmar got up from his seat. "Let them go," he said with a laugh. "They will be back in 1 month, begging for these same terms." "Maybe we will make the terms even worse then." The other aliens nodded and agreed. They had seen this before with other species. The humans were just being stubborn. When they faced the full power of the Galactic Council, they would come crawling back. But Jake Morrison had other plans. As he walked down the long hallway away from the meeting room, he thought about the 3 years of war. He remembered the first time the Zalkarians attacked a human colony. He remembered the desperate fights in space. He remembered the young soldiers who died protecting Earth's children. The aliens thought humans were weak because they had fewer ships. They thought humans were stupid because they used different tactics. They did not understand that humans had something the aliens had forgotten during their long years of peace. Humans knew how to fight for what they believed in. "Sir," Admiral Sullivan said as they walked, "the fleet commanders are asking for orders." "Tell them to begin Phase 1, Morrison said. "All military units are to withdraw to rally points. No direct engagement unless fired upon first." Sullivan nodded and spoke into her communicator. Across the galaxy, human ships began moving. They pulled back from battles they were winning. They left positions they had held for months. The aliens would think the humans were retreating in fear. They would be wrong. Back in the meeting hall, the aliens were already making plans. They would divide up the human colonies between them. They would take the best human technology. They would make humans into servants who would do the dangerous work. The humans have some interesting medical knowledge, said Ambassador Yildar. My people could use their doctors. Their engineering is quite advanced, added Council Member Draxelon. We should make sure to capture their technical experts. They talked about humans like they were things to be owned, not people with feelings and dreams. This was exactly what Morrison had expected. The aliens had shown their true nature today, as the human team reached their ship. Morrison looked back at the huge council building. It was made of white stone and reached high into the sky. It was supposed to represent peace and cooperation between all species. Instead, it had become a symbol of the strong taking from the weak. They will regret this, Kate Sullivan said quietly. Morrison nodded. Yes, they will, but first we have work to do. The human ship lifted off from the council world. It was a small vessel compared to the massive alien ships around it, but it carried something more valuable than weapons or armor. It carried the message that humans would not be slaves. As they flew away, Morrison sent out more orders. Every human colony would be evacuated. Every human ship would withdraw. Every human scientist, doctor, engineer, and teacher would come home. The aliens wanted to rule humans, but they would find there were no humans left to rule. The plan was simple but would require perfect timing. For 3 years, humans had been fighting a war they could not win with normal tactics. Now they would try something the aliens would never expect. They would disappear. How long do you think it will take them to realize what we are really doing? Sullivan asked. Morrison smiled for the first time in months. Not long enough, he said, but by then it will be too late to stop us. The ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving the council world behind. Across the galaxy, other human ships were doing the same thing. The Great Withdrawal had begun. In the council building, the aliens were still celebrating their victory. They did not know that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They thought they had defeated humanity. Instead, they had just taught humans that they could not trust anyone but themselves. The war was not over. It was just beginning. And this time, the humans would fight it on their own terms. As Morrison's ship traveled through space toward Earth, he thought about what came next. The aliens would learn that humans were not just another species to be conquered. They would learn that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you pushed humans too far. And Jake Morrison would make sure it was a lesson they would never forget. 3 months had passed since the humans walked out of the peace talks. The aliens were still waiting for Earth to come back and beg for mercy. They expected human ships to arrive any day with white flags and surrender messages. But something very different was happening across the galaxy. The human ships were disappearing. Captain Lisa Parker stood on the bridge of her destroyer called the New Haven. She was watching the final part of Operation Exodus happen around her. 47 human ships were getting ready to leave the Kepler sector forever. They had been fighting here for 2 years, but now it was time to go home. All civilian ships have reached the jump point, Captain, said Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks. He was working at the navigation station. The colony evacuation is complete. Parker nodded as she looked at the screen showing all the human ships. 3 years of war had taught them to work together perfectly. Every ship knew exactly what to do. Send the signal to all ships. Everyone jumps when I give the order. The human colony below had been home to 2 million people just 1 week ago. Now it was empty. The humans had taken everything useful with them. They had even taken apart the power plants and the water treatment facilities. They left nothing behind that could help their enemies. Admiral Kreshtak of the Zelkarian Navy arrived at the human colony just as the last human ships were jumping away. He stood on his flagship looking down at the empty cities and silent space stations. His aide came up to him with a report. They took everything, Admiral, the aide said. Every piece of technology, every useful machine. They even took apart the generators that made electricity. Kreshtak stared at the empty planet. This was not what he had expected. How many people lived here? 2 million, sir, all gone. We found no bodies, no signs of fighting. They just left. This was happening all over the galaxy. Human colonies that had been full of life just days before were now ghost towns. The aliens who came to capture these places found nothing but empty buildings and stripped machinery on the council. Homeworld, Speaker Vexstar called an emergency meeting. The Great Hall was full of worried alien representatives. They were all talking at once, their voices creating a loud noise of fear and confusion. The humans have simply vanished, said Ambassador Yildar. He represented the Centauri Trade Federation. Our business deals with them were worth 12% of all our trade. The money problems are already starting. Council member Draxelen was a reptile-like creature from the Outer Rim. He made angry hissing sounds as he spoke. Their medical technology was very important to our colonies. Human doctors were the only ones who could treat the Caesarian plague. Without them, we might face a disease outbreak that could kill millions. More reports came in every day. The aliens were slowly learning how much they had depended on humans without even knowing it. Human engineers had been keeping important. Machines working on 17 different worlds. Human scientists had been leading research projects that were now abandoned. Human soldiers had been teaching alien forces how to fight better. The silence where human voices used to be was frightening. Dr. Sarah Lewis had been working as a scientist for the Council before the war started. Now she was on a human colony ship with 50,000 other people. The ship was looking for new worlds to live on, far away from the Council space. The Council is starting to panic, she told her husband, Captain Kevin Murphy. They were reading secret reports from friends still in Council space. They never realized how much work humans were doing for them. Murphy nodded as he looked at the reports. They thought we were just troublemakers. They did not know we were holding their civilization together. The colony ship was one of hundreds like it, all carrying humans to new homes. The ships were packed with families, scientists, doctors, teachers, and workers. They had taken their knowledge and skills with them when they left. The aliens would have to learn how to do everything themselves. On the planet Nexus 7, the main computer system that controlled all the space traffic had stopped working. The human engineer who had been maintaining it was gone. The aliens tried to fix it themselves, but they did not understand how the human design system worked. Ships started crashing into each other. Trade stopped. The planet's economy began to collapse. The same thing was happening on dozens of worlds. Human expertise had been quietly keeping things running. Now that the humans were gone, everything was falling apart. General Thokmar was not laughing anymore. He sat in his command center looking at reports from across the Zelkarian Empire. The news was all bad. The humans were running the mining operations on Kepler 4, his aide reported. Production has dropped by 80% since they left. Our own engineers do not know how to operate the equipment. What about the defensive systems on the border worlds? Thokmar asked. Also failing, sir. The humans had upgraded all our detection systems. Without their technicians, we cannot maintain them properly. Thokmar realized they had made a terrible mistake. The humans had not just been fighting them. They had been helping other parts of the galaxy at the same time. Now all that help was gone. Captain Lisa Parker was now on a human exploration ship heading into unknown space. She was looking for new worlds where humans could build fresh colonies. The ship's sensors had found 3 planets that might be suitable for human life. Any word from the Council? She asked her communications officer. Nothing official, Captain. But we are picking up a lot of emergency broadcasts. It sounds like things are getting bad in Council space. Parker was not surprised. She had seen the reports before they left. Humans had been involved in almost every part of galactic society. They had been doctors, engineers, teachers, soldiers, and scientists. Taking all of them away at once was like removing the foundation from a building. Meanwhile, the Outer Rim territories were facing their own crisis. Without human military advisors, the local defense forces could not handle the increasing pirate attacks. The pirates were getting bolder, attacking bigger targets. A group called the Crimson Fleet had been a small problem before. Now they were becoming a real threat. They had better ships and weapons than the local defenders. Without human tactical knowledge, the aliens could not fight them effectively. Commander Jake Torres had been a human military advisor to the Outer Rim Defense Force. Now he was on a transport ship heading back to Earth. He was reading intelligence reports about the Crimson Fleet's activities. "They are using our own tactics against them," he told his wife, Dr. Amy Rodriguez. "The pirates learned how to fight by watching us during the war. Now they are better at it than the aliens we were trying to help." Rodriguez shook her head sadly. "The Council never understood that our strength was not in our weapons. It was in our ability to think of new ways to solve problems." The reports kept coming in. The Crimson Fleet had captured 5 systems in the past month. They were using hit-and-run tactics that the human military had perfected. The aliens had no idea how to counter these strategies. On Earth, Admiral Frank Chun was reading all the intelligence reports in his office. He had been recalled from his position as a military advisor to the Council just before the peace talks. Now he was watching the galaxy fall apart without human help. "The situation is worse than we expected," he told President Helen Carter. "The aliens are not just losing human support. They are losing to enemies who learned from us." Carter looked at the reports with concern. "How long before complete collapse?" "At this rate, maybe 6 months. The Council's military is not ready for real war. They have been at peace for too long." The irony was not lost on anyone. The aliens had tried to make humans into servants. Instead, they had discovered that they were the ones who needed help. They had built their civilization on human knowledge and work without even realizing it. Back on the Council homeworld, Speaker Vexstar was facing the biggest crisis of his career. The Great Hall was half empty now. Many species had already left the Council, deciding to handle their own problems instead of waiting for help that might never come. "We may have made an error in judgment," Council member Draxelin admitted quietly. "The humans were more important to galactic stability than we realized." Vexstar's crystal body dimmed with shame. "They offered us partnership. We offered them slavery. Now we are learning the difference." The silence continued to spread across the galaxy. Where human voices had once been heard, there was now only emptiness. The aliens were discovering that they had not conquered humanity. They had simply driven away the people who had been keeping their civilization alive, and somewhere in the darkness of space, human ships continued their journey to new worlds, carrying with them all the knowledge and skills the galaxy had just lost. 6 months had passed since the humans walked away from the peace talks. The Galactic Council was now facing its first real war in 300 years. The Outer Rim territories had fallen to a group of pirates called the Crimson Fleet. Without human military help, the Council's forces were being beaten badly. Admiral Frank Chun stood in the war room of Terra Station, humanity's new command center. The station was hidden deep in an unexplored area of space. Around him, huge screens showed what was happening across the galaxy. The news was not good for the aliens. "The Crimson Fleet has taken 14 star systems in the past month," reported Colonel Amy Rodriguez. She was Chun's intelligence chief. "The Council's response has been very weak." Chun studied the battle reports with professional interest. He had spent years training alien forces before the war started. Now he was watching them fail without human guidance. "They are using the same old battle tactics they have used for hundreds of years. They never change their plans. They never try new ideas." President Helen Carter joined them at the display screens. She was humanity's elected leader and had been making the hard decisions about their future. "Have we heard anything from the Council?" 3 unofficial requests for help," Rodriguez replied. "All sent through secret channels. They are getting desperate but do not want to admit it publicly." The situation was worse than even the humans had expected. The Crimson Fleet was not just a group of simple pirates. They were well organized and used advanced tactics. Their leader was a former council military officer who had been dismissed for being too aggressive. Now he was using everything he had learned to destroy his former employers. Captain Rex Voidheart had been his name when he served the council. Now he called himself Admiral Crimson and commanded a fleet of 200 ships. He had studied human military tactics during the recent war and learned from them. The aliens had taught him how to fight by watching humans do it. The council forces are predictable, he told his fleet commanders during a strategy meeting. They move in straight lines. They use the same formations every time. They do not adapt when their plans fail. His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Captain Ironjaw, grinned with sharp teeth. The humans would have been much harder to fight. They changed their tactics every battle. Exactly, Admiral Crimson agreed. The council drove away the only people who could have stopped us. Now we take everything they have. On the council homeworld, Speaker Vexstar was struggling to hold emergency meetings. The Great Hall was in chaos as representatives shouted over each other. The careful diplomatic politeness they had maintained for centuries was cracking under the pressure of real crisis. The Crimson Fleet has better ships and weapons than our forces, General Thokmar admitted. It was hard for him to say these words. Our soldiers are trained for ceremonial parades and small border disputes. We have not fought a real war in over 300 years. Ambassador Yildar stood up slowly. His usually calm appearance showed signs of great stress. Perhaps we should consider reaching out to the humans. Their military methods proved very effective against us during our war. The chamber fell completely silent. The suggestion hung in the air like poison gas. No one wanted to admit they needed help from the species they had tried to enslave. Council member Draxelin finally spoke. We drove them away with our pride and arrogance. Why would they help us now? Meanwhile, on a human colony ship far from council space, Captain Kevin Murphy was reading encrypted intelligence reports. The ship carried 50,000 human civilians and was one of hundreds searching for new worlds to colonize. His wife, Dr. Sarah Lewis, was reading the same reports. The council is losing very badly, Murphy told her as they reviewed the information in their private quarters. The Crimson Fleet is using human tactics against them. The same tactics we developed during our war with the Zelkarians. Lewis had been a xenobiologist working for the council before the human exodus. She understood alien psychology better than most humans. They never understood that our strength was not in our technology or our numbers. It was in our ability to adapt and think outside their rigid systems. The reports painted a clear picture. The council's military was designed for a peaceful galaxy. Their officers were politicians first and soldiers second. They had never faced an enemy that could change tactics in the middle of a battle, but the problems were getting worse. Other hostile forces were emerging from the dark corners of the galaxy. They could sense the Council's weakness and were moving to take advantage of it. The Void Syndicate was a mysterious organization that had stayed hidden for thousands of years. They began attacking Council research facilities, stealing advanced technology. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. The Hive Collective was even more dangerous. They were insect-like creatures from the galaxy's core regions. They had been quiet for centuries, but now they were sending scout ships to probe council borders. Their ships were biological, grown rather than built. And they were very hard to destroy. General Thokmar stood before the council's emergency war committee. His proud bearing was gone, replaced by the tired look of a leader facing impossible odds. We have lost 47 star systems to various hostile forces. Our military doctrine is completely inadequate for modern warfare. The humans fought for 3 years against impossible odds, added Admiral Kreshtak. They held territory we could not defend for 3 weeks. It was a bitter truth. The humans had been outnumbered 10-1 during their war with the Zelkarians. They had been fighting on multiple fronts with limited supplies, yet they had held their ground and even won some battles. The Council forces could not last a month against the same enemies. On Earth, now hidden in an uncharted nebula, President Carter received the first official communication from the Galactic Council in over a year. The message was brief and tried to sound dignified, but everyone could hear the desperation underneath. The Galactic Council requests immediate consultation regarding the current galactic security crisis. We acknowledge previous misunderstandings and hope to establish productive dialogue. Carter shared the message with her War Council. The room included Admiral Chun and several other former Council military advisors. They all understood what the message really meant. They are not asking for help, observed Admiral Chun. They are asking for consultation. They are still trying to save face, while their galaxy burns around them, added General Patricia Moore. She had been the human representative to the Council's military committee before the war. Classic Council arrogance. Dr. Lewis, now serving as humanity's chief xenobiologist, brought up the bigger picture. If the Council falls completely, the galaxy will descend into chaos. Billions of innocent civilians will suffer. Carter nodded slowly. The question is whether we can trust them to honor any new agreements. They have shown their true nature once already. The debate continued for hours. Some wanted to let the Council face the consequences of their actions. Others argued that humanity had a responsibility to help prevent galactic catastrophe. Both sides had valid points. Meanwhile, the situation in Council space was getting worse by the day. The Crimson Fleet had captured a major shipyard and was building new vessels. The Void Syndicate had stolen the plans for several advanced weapons systems. The Hive Collective was massing ships near the galactic core on the Council homeworld. Speaker Vexstar faced the most humiliating moment of his long career. The chamber was half empty, with many species having withdrawn from the Council entirely. Those who remained were bitter and desperate. The humans were right, admitted Council member Draxelum. We offered them terms designed to humiliate, not to achieve peace. Now we are paying the price for our arrogance. The speaker's crystalline form dimmed with shame. How do we even begin to repair the damage we have done? Ambassador Yildar looked around the nearly empty chamber. We start by admitting we were wrong. We start by asking for forgiveness. We start by offering real partnership instead of domination. But even as they talked about making amends, the military situation continued to deteriorate. The Council's forces were in full retreat on multiple fronts. Entire sectors were being abandoned as aliens fled before the advancing enemy fleets. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about the value of human partnership. But the question remained whether that lesson was coming too late to save them from the chaos they had created. 1 year had passed since the humans walked away from the peace talks. The galaxy was now in complete chaos. The Galactic Council was falling apart as hostile forces attacked from all directions. The situation had become much worse than anyone had imagined possible. The Crimson Fleet now controlled almost 1/3 of what used to be Council space. Their raids were becoming bolder every day. Admiral Crimson had proven to be a brilliant military leader, using tactics he had learned from watching humans fight. His ships struck fast and disappeared before the Council forces could respond, but the Crimson Fleet was not the only threat. The Void Syndicate had emerged from the shadows and was targeting Council research facilities across the galaxy. They moved like ghosts, appearing without warning to steal technology and disappear again. No one knew who they really were or where they came from. The Hive Collective was perhaps the most terrifying threat of all. The insect-like creatures from the galaxy's core had begun probing Council borders with increasing frequency. Their bioships were unlike anything the Council had ever faced. They seemed to learn and adapt with each encounter. General Thokmar stood before the Council's Emergency War Committee in the capital city. His once proud appearance was now hollow and defeated. The great Zalkarian warrior looked like he had aged 10 years in the past few months. We have lost 47 star systems to various hostile forces, he reported to the assembled leaders. Our military doctrine is completely inadequate for modern warfare. We are losing battles we should be winning. Admiral Kreshtak, who had once laughed at human military capabilities, now spoke with deep regret. The humans fought for 3 years, against impossible odds. They held territory we could not defend for 3 weeks. We were fools to dismiss their abilities. The truth was becoming clear to everyone. The Council's military had been designed for a peaceful galaxy. Their officers were trained in diplomacy and ceremony, not real warfare. They had lived in peace for so long that they had forgotten how to fight. The human military advisors who had once worked with Council forces were now gone. The tactical knowledge they had shared was lost. The innovative strategies they had developed were forgotten. The Council was fighting with 300-year-old methods against enemies using modern tactics on Earth. Hidden deep in an uncharted nebula, President Helen Carter was meeting with her military advisors. The planet was now the center of a growing human civilization that existed completely separate from the galaxy's power structures. "The reports are getting worse every day," Admiral Frank Chun told her as they reviewed the latest intelligence. "The Council is facing complete collapse. Multiple hostile forces are tearing apart everything they built." "How long before total breakdown?" Carter asked. "At this rate, maybe 3 months," Chun replied. "The Council's government is already fragmenting. Several major species have withdrawn completely. Others are making separate peace deals with the hostile forces." General Patricia Moore, who had once been the human representative to the Council's military committee, shook her head. "Sadly, they created this situation themselves. They drove away the only people who could have helped them." The irony was not lost on anyone in the room. The Council had tried to make humans into servants and had instead discovered that they were the ones who needed help. They had built their entire civilization on human knowledge and expertise without realizing it. Dr. Sarah Lewis, now serving as humanity's chief xenobiologist, brought up the moral implications. If the Council falls completely, billions of innocent civilians will suffer. Entire species could be wiped out. It was a difficult question. The Council leaders had brought this disaster on themselves through their arrogance and prejudice. But the common people of those worlds had done nothing wrong. They were paying the price for their leaders' mistakes. Meanwhile, the situation in Council space was getting worse by the hour. The Crimson Fleet had captured a major industrial world and was using its factories to build new warships. Admiral Crimson was recruiting new followers from among the displaced populations of conquered worlds. "The old order is dead," he announced in a broadcast to the entire galaxy. "The Council's age of weakness and corruption is over. We will bring strength and unity to the galaxy through conquest." His words found eager listeners among those who had suffered under Council rule. Many species had been forced to accept unfavorable trade agreements or unfair territorial divisions. Now they saw a chance to get revenge. The Void Syndicate was also growing stronger. Their mysterious agents had infiltrated Council research facilities and stolen the plans for advanced weapons. They were building new technologies that the Council had never seen before. Their leader, known only as the Shadow Master, remained hidden from public view. But his influence was spreading throughout the galaxy's criminal underworld. Pirates, smugglers, and mercenaries were flocking to join his organization. The Hive Collective was perhaps the most dangerous threat of all. Their bioships were now massing in huge numbers near the galactic core. Scout reports indicated they were preparing for a massive invasion of Council space. The insect creatures communicated through pheromones and electrical impulses. They thought as a single massive mind, making them incredibly difficult to predict or counter. Their ships could repair themselves and adapt to new weapons in real time. Back on the Council homeworld, Speaker Vexstar was struggling to maintain order in the Great Assembly Hall. The chamber was now less than half full, with many species having already abandoned the Council entirely. "We must face the truth," he announced to the remaining delegates. "Our civilization is collapsing. Without immediate help, we will not survive the next few months." Council member Draxelin stood up slowly. The reptilian leader looked exhausted and defeated. "The humans offered us partnership. We offered them slavery. Now we are learning the difference between cooperation and domination." Ambassador Yildar, who had once been eager to exploit human medical knowledge, now spoke with genuine remorse. "We treated them as inferior beings when they were actually keeping our civilization functioning. We have made the greatest mistake in galactic history." The first official request for human assistance came 3 days later. It was sent through diplomatic channels and marked as urgent. The message was brief, but its meaning was clear. The Galactic Council formally requests immediate military assistance from the Human Federation. We acknowledge our previous errors in judgment and are prepared to negotiate new terms of cooperation. The message reached Earth within hours. President Carter called an emergency session of the Human Leadership Council. The debate that followed was intense and emotional. "They drove us away with insults and threats," argued Admiral Chun. "Why? Should we risk human lives to save them from their own stupidity?" "Because if we do not act, the galaxy will descend into permanent chaos," replied Dr. Lewis. "Billions of innocent people will die." General Moore brought up the tactical considerations. "Even if we wanted to help, we do not have enough ships to fight all these enemies at once. The Council's military is useless. We would be facing impossible odds." The discussion continued for hours. Some wanted to let the Council face the consequences of their actions. Others argued that humanity had a moral obligation to prevent galactic catastrophe. Both sides presented valid arguments. Meanwhile, the military situation continued to deteriorate. The Crimson Fleet had begun a major offensive against the Council's core worlds. The Void Syndicate had attacked 3 more research facilities. The Hive Collective had started crossing the galactic border in significant numbers on the Council. Homeworld, panic was beginning to set in. Millions of civilians were trying to evacuate to safer regions. The government was struggling to maintain basic services as key personnel fled. Speaker Vextar stood alone in his private office, looking out at the city below. Smoke was rising from several districts where riots had broken out. The great towers of the Council complex, once symbols of galactic unity, now seemed like monuments to failure. He had spent his entire life believing in the Council's mission of peace and cooperation. Now he was watching it all crumble because of their own prejudice and arrogance. The humans had been right to walk away. The Council had proven they were not worthy of trust or respect. The galaxy was learning that some mistakes could not be undone. The question now was whether humanity would be willing to help save them from the consequences of their own actions. The response from Earth came not through secret messages or diplomatic channels, but through a simple broadcast sent to every corner of the galaxy. The message was delivered by Ambassador Jake Morrison, speaking from the bridge of humanity's newest ship, the Second Chance. "This is Ambassador Morrison to the Galactic Council," his voice carried across space to billions of listeners. "We have received your request for consultation. We are prepared to discuss terms, but this time we negotiate as equals." The human fleet that emerged from the hidden nebula was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The ships were sleek and efficient, their designs improved by years of warfare and innovation. They moved with perfect coordination, like a single, living organism. Leading the fleet was the massive dreadnought Terra's Pride, Admiral Frank Chun's flagship. The ship was 3 times larger than any vessel the Council had ever built, yet it moved with the grace of a fighter craft. Its weapons were hidden, but everyone knew they were there. The peace talks were held on a neutral station far from any major world. This time the humans arrived not as beggars seeking mercy, but as the galaxy's last hope for survival. The power balance had completely changed. Morrison sat across from Speaker Vextar in the conference room. The alien leader's crystalline body had lost much of its former brightness. The stress of the past year had taken its toll on him and his people. "Before we discuss military assistance," Morrison began, "we need to address the problems that led to this crisis. The galaxy is burning because of old thinking and rigid systems." Admiral Chun stood beside Morrison, his uniform clean and pressed despite the long journey from Earth. "The Council's military doctrine is 300 years out of date. Your forces are trained for parades and ceremonies, not real wars. If we are going to help, we need complete authority to restructure your military." President Carter appeared as a hologram speaking from Earth's Secure Command Center. "We are proposing a complete reorganization of galactic defense. Joint human-alien task forces, shared technology, and most importantly, shared decision-making." The Council members looked at each other nervously. These terms were far more generous than they had any right to expect after what they had done. But they also represented a complete change in how the galaxy would be governed. What promise do we have that humans will not simply take control once the crisis is over? Asked Council Member Draxelin. His reptilian features showed both hope and fear. Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Because we have already proven we do not want control. We just want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. But we will not tolerate being treated as servants ever again. The negotiations took 3 days, but the outcome was clear from the beginning. The Council needed humanity far more than humanity needed the Council. The new Galactic Defense Treaty established joint human-alien forces under shared command. With humans taking the lead in all military matters, the first joint operation began within a week. Admiral Chun commanded a mixed fleet of human and alien ships in an attack on a Crimson Fleet stronghold. The aliens watched in amazement as human tactics proved their effectiveness once again. All ships, this is Admiral Chun, his voice carried across the communication channels. Remember, we are not here to conquer, we are here to restore peace. Show them what real cooperation looks like. The battle was over in 6 hours. The Crimson Fleet forces, who had been winning every engagement against Council ships, were completely outmaneuvered by the Joint Human-Alien Task Force. Admiral Crimson himself was captured when his flagship was surrounded and disabled. Captain Lisa Parker, now commanding the human cruiser New Dawn, worked alongside a Zelkarian captain named Veltar. Just 2 years ago, they had been trying to kill each other. Now they coordinated their attacks like old friends. Human ship New Dawn, this is Zelkarian vessel Stormbearer, Veltar's voice came through the communication system. We have the enemy flagship trapped. Request permission to accept their surrender. Permission granted, Stormbearer, Parker replied. Good work, Captain. Your people are fast learners. The success of the first joint operation sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The hostile forces that had been advancing on all fronts suddenly found themselves facing competent opposition. The tide of war began to turn. Within 3 months, the combined forces had pushed back the Crimson Fleet, negotiated a peace treaty with the Void Syndicate, and established defensive lines against the Hive Collective. The galaxy was stable once again, but it was forever changed. General Patricia Moore stood in the command center of the new Joint Defense Headquarters. Around her, humans and aliens worked side by side, sharing information and coordinating operations. It was the kind of cooperation that should have existed years ago. The Hive Collective is withdrawing to their core territories, reported Colonel Amy Rodriguez. Our new defense systems are keeping them contained. What about the Void Syndicate? Moore asked. They have agreed to return all stolen technology. In exchange for limited trading rights, Rodriguez replied. Their leader, the Shadow Master, wants to meet with you personally. Moore nodded. The galaxy was learning that most conflicts could be resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. The humans had brought not just military expertise, but also a different approach to problem-solving. Ambassador Morrison walked through the corridors of the rebuilt council chamber. The Great Hall had been redesigned to accommodate both human and alien delegates. The old system of rigid hierarchy had been replaced with genuine cooperation. The transformation is remarkable, said Dr. Sarah Lewis, who had returned to serve as humanity's chief science advisor. 6 months ago, these species could barely work together. Now they are planning joint exploration missions. Morrison stopped at a window overlooking the city below. The streets were busy with both human and alien citizens going about their daily lives. Children of different species played together in the parks. It was the kind of future he had always hoped for. Think it will last? Asked Captain Kevin Murphy, who had been appointed as the new human representative to the council. Morrison considered the question carefully. It will, if we remember the lessons we have learned. The galaxy is too dangerous for the old ways to work anymore. Speaker Vexstar approached them, his crystalline form now brighter than it had been in months. Ambassador Morrison, I wanted to thank you personally. Your people have given us a second chance we did not deserve. We all make mistakes, Speaker, Morrison replied. The important thing is learning from them. The final session to approve. The new treaties was held exactly 1 year after the human exodus. The chamber was full again, but the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of arrogance and condescension, there was mutual respect and genuine cooperation. We gather today, not to dictate terms to the weak, Vexstar announced to the assembly, but to acknowledge a fundamental truth. The galaxy's diversity is its strength, and no single species has all the answers. The humans have taught us that real strength comes from working together, not from domination. Admiral Chun watched from the human delegation area as the treaty passed by unanimous vote. Beside him, Morrison reviewed the deployment schedules for the new joint forces. Ready to go home? Chun asked. Morrison smiled, and this time it was genuine. For the first time in years, yes? But we are not running away this time. We are going home as equals and partners. The human fleet began its journey back to Earth, but this time they were not alone. Alien observers, diplomats, and military advisors traveled with them, beginning a new era of true galactic cooperation. As Terra's pride entered the nebula surrounding Earth, Morrison sent a message to every human ship and colony in the galaxy. Operation Exodus is complete. The galaxy has learned to respect us. Welcome to our new future. 5 years later, the galaxy was more peaceful and prosperous than it had ever been. The Joint Defense Forces had become the most effective peacekeeping organization in galactic history. The cooperation between humans and aliens had led to amazing advances in technology and science. Most importantly, the lesson had been learned and remembered. No species had the right to dominate another. True strength came from working together as equals. The galaxy had paid a high price to learn this truth, but it was a lesson that would not be forgotten. The peace talks that had begun with such arrogance and ended with such humility were now studied in schools across the galaxy. The human walkout that had seemed like defeat had become the catalyst for the greatest transformation in galactic history. And in the depths of space, human ships continued to explore alongside their alien partners, not as conquerors or servants, but as equals in the great adventure of discovery.